it's okay to get attention and to do a research. Think about it. How much will you impress your English teacher if you rather say, carry out a research and pay attention? Think about it. So if you want to impress your English teacher, then stay tuned in this lesson with me. My name is Michelle, and in this lesson, I'm going to help you choose a better verb for most of the nouns that you know. Right, so let's do away with the boring get, make, have, and start, and let's get on to the ride of learning better verbs. So the first one that we have with us is to do a crime. Well, you might be saying it, okay? Don't worry, it's not wrong English. It's okay to do a crime, that's correct English. But a better verb for crime would be to to commit a crime, okay? Rather than doing a crime. So you would say to commit a crime. Right. And if you want to use it in a sentence, you could say that John didn't think he was committing a crime when he hit Ricky on the head, right? So this is how you can use it, okay? It's a much better combination of a noun and a verb. And obviously, you would know that commit is a verb and crime is the noun. So this is how you can use a verb and a noun combination to sound much more natural and much more interesting. Let's look at the next one. Say jokes. Do you know someone who tells really poor jokes? Okay, did you hear me carefully? Do you know someone who tells really poor jokes? Did I say jokes? No, I said someone who tells poor jokes. Okay, so you do not say jokes, you tell jokes. Or you crack jokes. So if you know someone who tells you really poor jokes, you could tell that person, hey buddy, you crack really poor joke, or you tell really poor jokes. I think you should start to crack better jokes. All right, so another noun, okay, noun that you can use with the verb tell is lies. Yes, we often tell lies. We do not say lies, we tell lies. Of course, we all do. Now don't act so sincere and nice like you don't tell any lies. So, tell lies. Or tell jokes or possibly crack jokes. Great. Now let's look at the next one that we have. And this is to get courage. Okay, now this is not wrong, do not worry. It's fine to get courage and be more courageous, and it's awesome to be more courageous. But the point is, here we are talking about a better verb, isn't it? So why don't we say pluck up courage instead of saying get courage? Doesn't that sound much more interesting? To pluck up courage, okay? And if you want to use it in a sentence, you could say, Ross finally plucked up the courage to ask her to marry him. This means he got the courage to ask her to marry him. So you're actually saying the same thing but with a better verb and noun combination, all right? Okay, so the next one that we have is to give attention. I'm sure you're giving attention to this lesson, but it would be much better if you pay attention to me, okay? So you pay attention and you also give attention, but it's much better to pay attention rather than giving attention. So, pay attention. Yes, pay attention and jot down everything that I'm telling you because these are some really good advice for you. Okay, so you could also say pay attention, and another noun that you can use with pay is compliments. You also pay compliments. It's quite boring to give compliments. It's better to say paying compliments. So you could say that she paid me a compliment yesterday, okay? Now let's look at the next one that we have. Caused protest. Okay, to cause protest means to lead to protest, okay? When there's a reason, when something leads to a protest. So what about food shortages? Do you think they lead to protests? Yes. So I recently read this headline where it was written that the food shortages in the city triggered protests. Isn't that awesome? Instead of saying caused protests, the newspaper headline said, the recent food shortages have triggered protests, which means they have led to protests. Okay, so we can say triggered protests instead of saying caused protests. Now let's look at the next one. Yes, you can definitely cause interest in something, okay? But it's better to say generate interest, all right? So if you want to use it in a sentence, you could say, you need to think of new ideas to generate interest in your products, all right? So generate interests. You could also say generate ideas. You need to generate new ideas to get people more interested in your lessons. Oops, I hope that's not true for me. I think I have enough new ideas for you to keep interested. Okay, let's look at the next one that we have. To get injuries. Yeah, we often use to get injuries, but it's much better to say sustain injuries. Okay, and if you want to talk about someone who got injured, you would say that Tom sustained severe injuries in the accident, okay? Which means to experience injuries or to get injuries. All right. Now the next one that we have is to keep a job. Okay, now there are some people who are very bad at keeping a job. But what does it mean to keep a job? So to keep a job means to get hold of a job or to hold a job down, which means not to hop from one job to another. So there are so many people who cannot just work in the same place for a very long time. They keep hopping from one job to another. And if you want to tell them something, you could say, hold a job down, instead of saying keep a job. So you could say that you just cannot hold a job down, which means that you cannot work at the same place for a very long time period. Great. Now we come to the next one, which is to start a conversation. Okay, we really need to do away with starting something, okay? Let's stop starting a conversation and let's start striking a conversation, which is so much more interesting. So we can say strike a conversation. And if you want to use it in a sentence, you could say, Anna struck a conversation with a girl at the restaurant. Okay, which means that she started a conversation. But it's much better to strike a conversation rather than to say start a conversation, which is pretty boring and will surely not impress your English teacher. Okay, with that, we move to the last two. Okay, now I want you to pay some attention, okay, and listen to me carefully. All the combinations that we have used here are verb and noun combinations. Okay, which means that the verb comes first and the noun comes second, like this one, strike, which is a verb, and conversation, which is a noun. And this is true for all of these, okay? You can check that for yourself. But in the next two that we have, first comes the noun and then comes the verb. So these are different ways of combining verbs and nouns together. So here comes the noun plus verb. Okay, so let's look at the first one. Fire started. Yes, fire does start, but fire also breaks out, which means that it starts. So broke out if you're talking in the past and breaks out if you're talking in the present. And if you want to use it in a sentence, you could say the fire broke out in the middle of the city. So here, fire is the noun and broke out is the verb. There's another thing which breaks out. You might have heard it in the news. It's a war, okay? A war often breaks out rather than starting. So you could say that a war broke out between the two countries. All right? Okay, with that we come to the last one, and that is a gamble succeeded. So gamble is a huge risk, okay? It's a game where you put all your money at stake in order to win more money, okay? But in real life, gamble means that when you invest something in order to gain something, okay? So it's a huge risk. Sometimes you might lose all that you have invested. But in other cases, you don't lose and you win something in return, something even larger than what you have invested. In that case, the gamble succeeds, okay? But there's a better way of saying this. Instead of saying gamble succeeded, you can say gamble paid off. So my friend started a new business, all right? So when she started the business, I thought she was getting into a huge risk. But ultimately, the business succeeded, and I told her, lady, your gamble paid off, which means that your risk was not a risk, you actually succeeded in it. Awesome! So with this, we come to an end of this lesson where we have learned awesome verb and noun and verb combinations. Now you know which verb to choose. So reap the benefit and win the praise of your fluent English. Come back for more lessons with me. This is Michelle signing off. Bye-bye.